Brought to you by PaintballToTheEnd.com.
Welcome to 10 Minute Marks, episode number 19.
I'm Paul.
And I am not a member of WWE Creative, although I should be because you're using my ideas. I am Jeff, and today we will be discussing our top fives of all time.
Absolutely, the top 5 matches from each of us, and also my top 5 favorite Bret Hart opponents.
And my top favorite Shawn Michaels opponents.
Oh yeah. I'm going to go with my number 5, and that is Savage and Steamboat at WrestleMania 3. I obviously didn't see this match till several years later. Like I said, I was a late bloomer in wrestling.
And he's not as old as I am.
That's true. But what I really love about this match is it was the first match probably back then that was really athletic. Great near falls in it. The drama in the match was great. And obviously Savage wins the belt, and that allowed him to go even higher. And I loved both of those guys. I loved Randy Savage, and later on, when I saw more of Steamboat, I thought, wow, this guy's one of the best baby faces ever. And it was a great match, and it put athleticism at the forefront. It wasn't all about Hogan's big body, you know, the Hogan versus Andre thing that was going on at WrestleMania 3. Number 4 would be Angle and Benoit at the Royal Rumble. That is my favorite Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit match. They've had a ton of matches. That's my favorite one, and what I love about it, their ring psychology is great. The way they played off each other, got into each other's head, copying each other's moves, and they barely threw any punches or chops at each other. It was all smack dab in the middle of the ring. That is wrestling at its greatest art form. It is so awesome. Number 3 is another Angle match, Angle and Lesnar at WrestleMania. Even though both were injured, they put on an emotional wrestling clinic, and the way they integrated a lot of their mat wrestling, like holds, you know, the roll-ups. I loved it when Angle had the single leg on Lesnar, and Lesnar turned it into something else, and it was just counter, you know, reversal, move, reversal. And even though they were injured, it was a 5-star match. Jericho and Storm, one night stand. For one thing, I love Jericho, but I love the match too because even though it was only like a 10-15 minute match, they got the crowd into them so much, and you know, they loved both of them even though Lance Storm was the heel, because ECW fans don't care, they like the hard work. And I didn't mind Storm winning at the end with the kendo stick. I mean, Jericho had like 4 guys going at him. I like Lance Storm anyway, but I'm just saying as a Jericho mark that I didn't mind him losing. But it was a great match, and it was really athletic, and it reminded me of the old Bret Hart days a little bit. Of course, speaking of Bret Hart, number 1 is Bret and Shawn at WrestleMania 12. And very few guys can pull off a 1-hour Iron Man match, and those two did. I loved the drama that they would put in. I loved Shawn doing the perfect plex on Bret, and of course Bret kicks out, and they do this really cool run, roll-up, drop kick thing. And of course, Bret still won, even though at the end they didn't pin each other, so they went to sudden death and Shawn won. I thought that was a good way of not having Bret lose any, I don't know what I want to say, like star power. Bret still came off looking kind of strong is what I'm getting at. Overall, those are my 5 favorites.
My top 5 matches, a couple that are different. Number 5 for me would be Foley and The Undertaker at King of the Ring 98. We both like scientific athletic matches, but when you had that classic train wreck that was Foley and The Undertaker in Hell in a Cell, I mean, that's classic. Number 4 for me, Savage versus Steamboat, WrestleMania 3. Pretty much the first WrestleMania match that I seen, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
The ring psychology of that match was just epic, and having Jesse Ventura and Gorilla Monsoon to call it was put it even more over the top. Number 3 was Bret and Shawn at WrestleMania 12. Just the fact that they pulled off a 1-hour Iron Man match. Can you say any more? I mean, I know Cena did it with Orton. Yeah. But seriously. Yeah. Really. Number 2 for me And this was a hard one for me because everybody always asks me what my favorite tag team match is of all time, and this is it. Hart versus the Rockers at Saturday Night's Main Event in like June of '90.
Yeah.
It's really hard to pick this one over the Orient Express and the Rockers at Royal Rumble '91, but to me, this one, the way it went back and forth, and even though Demolition came into me, and I wish they wouldn't have. I wish the match wouldn't have ended the way it did. Up until the ending, it was classic tag team wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
Number one for me is not going to be a big surprise to anybody who knows me.
Right.
Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty, June of 1993, when Marty Jannetty wins the IC belt from Shawn.
Oh, yeah.
Voted by PWI, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, as the best match in the 1990s.
Oh, yeah.
And you look at the match, you know why. Both of these guys were at the top of their game then. They were, I mean, I'll always point to people when they say, well, Marty wasn't as good as Shawn. Oh, watch that match and you'll see.
Yeah.
Marty was every bit as good as Shawn. Now we're going to go and do top 5 Bret opponents of all time.
I almost want to say 6 favorites, but I have to go with 5. His greatest opponent ever, obviously, is Shawn Michaels. Not only because they were both athletic, they had different psychologies, but they complemented each other so well. The fact that they disliked each other, I think, added a little bit of drama to the match, or to their matches, rather. If you put them two together, it's money. I mean, you're going to have an athletic back-and-forth match. I loved his feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I thought they complemented each other really well. And I think it was also really good because here you had Bret, who was kind of the stand-up, I fight for the kids sort of thing, that fairy tale hero persona kind of guy. Stone Cold was this, bald, stark looking, I'm Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Billy
What?
Badass.
Yeah.
Billy Badass.
Billy Badass. There we go. So you had these two very contrasting people, but it worked so well, and their matches had so much drama into it, and I think it really helped Stone Cold to get over. I loved his matches with Mr. Perfect, especially at King of the Ring. I think it was 92 or 93. They both had long hair, and they both wrestled very similar, so it was kind of that good cop versus bad cop sort of thing, and I think that's why they really got over, because they were both very similar in contrast to Stone Cold, but they still were different in terms of one was the good guy and one was the bad guy, but they both wrestled very similar. I loved him versus Owen Hart because I related to it a lot too, because I have younger brothers who piss me off, and but I love them. Owen Hart, I love that brother psychology they had, and I loved how Owen got over at WrestleMania 10. I was going to go with Undertaker on this because he had a short feud with Bret, and it was really good. However, Benoit will be the 5th guy. For one thing, I loved Benoit. When Bret went to WCW, I was like, oh, that's really cool. 2 of my favorite guys are over there. And their matches were just epic. I mean, it was dungeon wrestling. My favorite match with them, of course, was the Owen Hart tribute match. But the matches for over the title were really good, too.
Top 5 Shawn Michaels opponents. I'm going to go from 5 to 1. Number 5, and I know they really only had one match. I'm putting number 5 up as, if they would have had a feud, how great would it have been? Rey Mysterio.
Oh, yeah.
Shawn Michaels versus Rey Mysterio. The match they had at the Eddie Guerrero tribute show was awesome. But the thing is, they were always both a face at the same time. I'd have loved to have seen them go at it when Rey was the champion, right after WrestleMania. And I think they could have had an awesome run together. Number 4 for me would have been Kurt Angle.
Yes.
The WrestleMania 21 match and the Vengeance match and the tiebreaker match after that, which ended in a draw.
Yeah.
These were two guys that, you had to envy Jim Ross because he got to call these matches, and they were so easy to call. I mean, you could just hear Jim Ross, and he was just like, he loved saying catch as catch can wrestling, and he got to say it a lot in those matches. But you got to envy him because he got to call these, and it was like, okay, this is simple. Just let him flow and go with it. Number 3 for me would have been The Undertaker. I never liked the idea of them facing off at WrestleMania because you know who was going to win. But it didn't take away from the matches they had there or the Hell in a Cell match they had back in '97, which to me, the Hell in a Cell match topped them all.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was the first time they wrestled together. I remember watching it going,
me too.
How is this going to work?
Uh-huh.
Going, these two guys are legends already, and it's going to be awesome, but it was just interesting to watch how was it going to work. Number 2 and number 1 were really hard for me to decide, but number 2 to me was, it wasn't hard to decide who was going to be but it's hard to decide who's number one out of these two. But I would say Marty Jannetty's number two. We all know why, with his partnership with Shawn, the way they worked together for 6 years. Of course, they're going to come out and have classic matches because they know each other like the back of each other's hands.
Mm-hmm.
And they were both athletic as all get out, and they both knew what to do at the ring, in the ring. And it was just, I wish to God Marty could have stayed in the WWE longer, because them two working the way they did together, they would have both shot to the top.
Oh, yeah.
Number one, of course, is Bret Hart. And pretty much for all the aforementioned reasons that he pointed out, again, both of them athletic as all get out, both of them at the top of their games when they were wrestling. I mean, all the stuff we've said before, but number one would have been Bret the Hitman Hart.
Episode 20 is coming up next. It is our super show. We get to go a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And
we're going to go as long as we damn well please.
Oh, yeah. And I do believe on that note that we are done.